So
Look, Mom, I'm failing. Look, Mom, I'm failing. Look, Mom, I'm failing. Hurry up and watch me fall.
Okay, let's do this. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to this week's episode of Look, Mum, I'm Failing, the podcast that brings together a seemingly unexpected duo, full-time professional artist and a business owner or leader in search of common themes and ways to endure and maybe even enjoy the process of failure and setbacks. I'm your host, Sam McNeil, performer, musician, presenter, general manager of Song Division, UK and Europe, all-round legend. That's in the script, so you got to say it. My guests this week are two people very close to my heart, Kris Gale and MiG Ayesa. When Kris isn't running Michael Johnson and Associates, he's organising incredible parties like Sold Out Sydney, leading the Australian pro wrestling movement, talking all things rugby league on FBI's Fire Up, DJing under the name The Godfather, and so much more. MiG Ayesa is one of Australia's best creative exports, an absolute powerhouse performer who has had lead roles in musicals around the world, including on Broadway and the West End. He was one of the runners-up in Star INXS' search for the new frontman, and admirers include people like Brian May. He's a crucial member of the Song Division family and spends most weekends performing the songs of Queen with symphony orchestras around the US to literally thousands of people. Boys, what an honour. How are we?
G'day, mate. Hello, world. How are you? Good to see you, Kris. And great. Thank you so much for having me, Sam.
I just echo what Mick said. Sam, I'm great, and it's great to see you both.
This is so fun. Listeners or listener, for a bit of context, these two hadn't met until maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I set them up on a blind date. They're both spoken for. They're both straight, but they were in New York at the same time, and I just love them both. So I got them to meet up. And how was I haven't spoken to you really, either of you. How was the date?
It was crazy day because guess what day we met in New York City?
Yes.
It was September 11. And so, of course, it was chaos where we were. And because Kris was staying sort of near Ground Zero, I thought it'd be a great idea. Why don't we just meet up near World Trade Center? That sounds like a great idea. Terrible idea.
It's kind of special, though.
Well, it was very special, but we decided we had to escape that crazy area at the time because there was really no place to sit down and relax. So we sat by the water there on the Hudson and had a nice coffee and latte and spoke of you, Sam.
Oh,
this is true. It was very good of Mick to take time out of his busy week to host me because I was just bumming around. And we immediately achieved common ground because we recognise there's a lot of improvements that you could make in your personality, Sam. So
okay. Well, we'll go through that.
We'll explore that over the course of this interview, I'm sure.
Okay. We're going to need a while.
It was a bonding experience.
Okay, you bonded over your critique of me. No, I just love that you two met because you are two of my favourite people. Let's get serious. Kris, I want to start with you. Speaking of getting serious, can you put the rumours to rest? Is Michael Johnson a person or not? Because I've tried to do some research online and it's actually genuinely not that clear.
Yeah, Michael Johnson is a terrific name for someone who's trying to blend in because there's plenty of them. And, high-profile one comes to mind would be the US athlete who won the 400 metres at the Sydney Olympics on the track. Yeah. But Michael is real. He was born in England and he actually emigrated to Australia 50 years ago. He actually had a party to celebrate his life in Australia and all the contacts that he made. And he started the professional practice that I joined in 1987 back in 1983. And he's real, baby.
I love that. Okay, and then so jumping to 87, and what I couldn't get an answer to that online, but what I did find out online is you are possibly the longest-serving R&D tax incentive consultant in Australia. Talk about rock star. Is that true?
That gets you incredible tables in restaurants, let me tell you. Never have to make a booking. But given you said serious, I'll be serious for a moment. So in the middle of the 80s, there was a visionary Australian politician called John Button, and he recognised that research and development is a critical engine of economic growth and prosperity. In other words, there's the old catchphrase, innovate or die, right? And most people think research and development is white coats, foaming test tubes, people in labs. It's a broader thing about new and improved products and processes and the creativity of a country to invent those and commercialize them. So he introduced a tax incentive in the mid-'80s that said if you're doing that work, we'll reduce your tax bill or increase your carry forward tax losses to reduce the effective cost of doing risky activity, which R&D is. So that program was introduced in 85 for 6 years. And here we are 40 years later. It's currently called the Research and Development Tax Incentive. It has broad bipartisan support, and it's a part of the innovation framework in this country around investment. And you'll find similar programs, including in the US and the UK. And I am a lifer in my professional services career in working in that area, mainly because I believe it. I believe in the impacts that it has and the ability to drive what I think is really important in an economy, which is creativity, innovation, and pursuit of the new and the improved.
Okay, I see. And is part of it that people don't necessarily either know that it's there or it's too complicated? You're helping to fill that?
40 years in, you hope that primarily there's an awareness of the availability of the program. It's surprising at times still people aren't aware of it because it's really the government's role to promote it. And because it's a tax break, the Revenue Authority struggles. Like I think it's called Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK, the Federal Reserve, I think in the United States, they don't like giving out tax breaks, right? So at times the government will establish a program but not really support and promote it. That's where we came in. Michael used to say, being English, that he felt like he was sitting on London Bridge selling sovereigns for a penny because no one knew it existed when we started. And for a long period, we were proselytizing this program is for you. And it was actually a very exciting time to be going into large and small organizations and actually saying the government's interested about what you're doing that's new and different and risky. And that's morphed now. The program's well established. There are lots of competitors in the market. It's a very different business now. Primarily, it's helping companies effectively access it rather than let them know about it.
Okay. And I want to come back to some of that in a moment, especially early on for you.
Sure.
But I want to ask MiG similar questions. Performing professionally since what age? When there was no other job, and that was what you did for a living?
Wow. It's kind of a hard question to answer that way because I was kind of like things were always a little bit mixed up. I was sort of either at school trying to get a degree at Macquarie University, and these jobs would be popping up, so I'd be sort of coming in and out of college and university, in and out of like deferring, much to my parents' dismay. But my first professional stage job, or actually my first acting job, was when I was 19 years old, and it was a pilot for a TV series, but it was a feature-length pilot, and the pilot was called Mission Top Secret, produced by a Grundy organization.
Wow,
you're old enough to know Grundy. And it was basically a pilot for a TV series about teenage espionage group. When the series actually came to fruition, the age group was a lot younger, so kind of I got aged.
I think I can guess where this is going. Can I guess?
Where did
was
it
it
go?
Spy Kids? No, the Henderson Kids? Or the Henderson Kids?
The Henderson Kids.
No. It actually was called Mission Top Secret.
Oh, really?
And so it actually,
So it went ahead, but you were aged out.
Yeah, I was aged out. But it was kind of like Henderson, Spy Kids, that kind of thing. It was kind of that concept. And maybe, I don't know what happened with the producers and like that. Maybe there was some kind of cross-referencing, cross-producing. I'm not too sure. But there was actually Mission Top Secret. I was thinking, this is good. 19 years of age. I thought this is what it's going to be. The next job's going to be a James Bond film, sure enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then what was the morph into when I actually we didn't cross paths because you didn't see me, but I was in the crowd when you're doing lead roles in things like Grease and stuff in Australia. How did it go from acting to that, or music or performance? Or were you always a singer as well?
Well, when I was a kid, I was just in musicals at school.
Okay.
I fell in love with music because as a younger kid, I had a stutter, but whenever I would sing, I would actually have no stutter at all. So it was the kind of thing that I fell in love with music because it was my therapy. It was my speech therapy. And after a couple of years of doing music, that's why I took piano lessons to accompany myself singing.
Wow, that's cool.
And so,
That's super cool.
so at high school, I kept on doing these high school musicals because it was a much cooler way of meeting girls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because
Oh.
I mean, my choice was play football. Or,
I know, but none of the sporty people got it. They were just like, "What are you doing?"
Smelly jocks, or learn how to ballroom dance with the local girls' school, and I chose the latter.
And in your situation, was like with us, there was like 4 guys. The ratio was insane.
It was good. Well, I'm going to talk about my success rate. I just really loved hanging around them.
Yeah, I know.
I was too young to actually know what to do with all that power.
Yeah. Okay. I want to go back to that exciting point for you as well, Kris. So you go in 87. You're you got a degree in economics and law. What did you think you were bringing to Michael Johnson and Associates, or what were they hoping you were bringing? What was your passion and purpose at that point, or was it just a job?
No. Basically, I wasn't interested. I just knew if I became good at the R&D tax incentive, it'd be a great way to meet girls. No.
Same as musical theatre.
I see the connection.
I studied economics and law, and actually, economics is a much beset upon profession because economists make the mistake of trying to predict the future, and when they get it wrong, they'll go, "Oh, yes, that's because," right? And prediction is a tough business. I have to say, I think meteorologists do it much better these days. The weather predictions seem to be more accurate these days. But economics is actually a way of understanding how we work and how we relate and the economic consequences of that. And I was very drawn to that. When I was studying law, particularly 40-odd years ago, I felt like it was essentially a comprehension exercise of how old Australian white blokes thought, the judgments and things like that. And again, the law is a fantastic profession with many great aspects, but it didn't particularly grab me. And it didn't particularly grab me because in Australia, the system is what we call adversarial. There's an issue. Each side has a representative who's a lawyer. And out of that conflict, if you like, the truth supposedly will out. And I've found myself, having done debating as a young person, I always believed the side I was given, and it worried me that I would be compromised by that sort of profession, whereas economics was a more understanding thing. So what I established by doing law at economics university was I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I didn't know what would happen next. I happened to be having lunch after I was doing the last step of law school, which was called College of Law, with a friend, and she just got a job. And she had, from the employment register, an ad for Michael Johnson and Associates under her door. And she said, "Oh, this looks like it could be interesting to you," because it was talking a little bit about the legal understanding of technical support programs for innovation and things like that. And I go, well, that kind of is interesting to me. I'll try and keep this short. The office was in a suburb of Balmain in Sydney, which is a peninsula, which you guys would know very well. And you went all the way down to the end of the peninsula for the interview, and there's a ferry wharf there. And there was an Australian sitcom in the 60s called My Name's Magooly, What's Yours? And I go, I'm walking down onto the set of My Name's Magooly. I met Michael. We had an instant rapport. It was around this idea of marrying your legal knowledge with a government support program that had economic consequence. It felt right. It was in Balmain. It was where my football team played, my local team.
Yeah, I was going to say near Leichhardt Oval.
Yep. And I got to the final 3 and I didn't get the job. And
great. So we can get into failure now. This is good.
So that was
setbacks.
So that was a setback. And I was pretty lazy, and I was just doing a clerking job at the local city council with no clear pattern of what I was going to do next. About a month later, I got a call, and I think I was in bed, and my mother handed me the phone from Michael saying, "I wondered if you'd come back for another interview. The original candidate was great. We'll always be friends, but it's not working out." I said, "Michael, I'd love to." And I very clearly remember where we went. We went to an old Balmain cafe, not there anymore, called the Black and White. And he said, "Look, the guy that I've employed, terrific bloke, will always be friends, but he's really not suited. Do you think you could stay awake in client meetings?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I could do that." Because this kid was falling asleep. He was just party
serious?
boy. No, seriously. And Michael said, "Okay, well, there's one other problem. You can't start for 6 weeks." And I go, "Oh, well, gee, Michael, that's that's tough. And I immediately quit my part-time job and had a 6-week holiday, right?
That's tough.
So I went in going, this is an area that I've been interested in academically. I have no idea about what this practice does because this is pre-internet. There was no way of finding out. I was really backing my instinct about Michael, and it was a decision that worked for me because I feel I can look at my professional career and say, I have made a positive contribution to the innovation debate in Australia, and it continues to be rewarding.
Yeah, right. That's very cool, and I want to come back to some of those early setbacks in a moment, Kris. But Mick, I guess same question for you in a way. Well, actually, another question on everyone's lips before we get into that. What's harder, Broadway or the West End?
Broadway.
Really? What, more cutthroat or more expectation, more pressure? What?
More competition.
Bigger.
More competition. I think, and I don't know. Maybe it's just me. This is my observation from what I saw working in both sides of the Atlantic. When I came to London, it was kind of like either, I don't know. I just all the pieces were aligned. All the planets were aligned. All the pieces seemed to fit.
You had the role already on We Will Rock You or not?
No, not even. I had not even planned to do any musical theatre when I arrived in London. It was I'd done musical theatre in Australia. I wasn't even planning on moving to the UK. But my wife at the time had a British passport, and she wanted to be, she's a dancer. She wanted to dance on the West End. I said, all right, you go and do that. You go to musical theatre. I'm going to be a songwriter, and I'm going to get a licensing deal, and I'm going to write songs for big pop stars, and that's what I'm going to do. But as soon as we got sort of there in London, realized how expensive it was to live there. And so I said, well, but before I do that, let me just audition for a couple of things because I probably need to work on, get some work before I get a chance to establish myself as a songwriter. And lo and behold, within about 4 or 5 weeks of me landing in London, I actually started rehearsals for Rent. So they were putting Rent in a theater just for a few months. They were looking for people who had done the roles before, had done the show before. And we had 10 days rehearsal.
Wow.
And I was like, they were looking for a guy who had
very specific
Angel.
Person.
Yeah,
basically you.
Specific. A guy who played Angel, who'd done the show, who was there and ready and hungry. And I'm like, well, I've done Angel. I just came off it in Australia a year or so, 2 years before. I know the role. I'm going to come in. And I just landed the role. And so within 4 or 5 weeks of me landing in the UK, I was already rehearsing for my first West End show.
Right. So was it easy? What was New York was much more tough grind to get those roles?
Well, it seemed like in the UK, it just seemed like if you had the right credentials or the right person for the job, then you would probably get the job because they're looking at that. However, in New York, there's probably 50 people who have got the right credentials and got the right look and got the right, everything could be the job. So who do they pick? They definitely work on kind of like, well, we've seen this guy before. He seems to really want it. How hungry is he? Maybe he's got it, but we'll give him a chance next time because we've got this guy who I've worked with before. He's done that show before. It kind of seems to be a lot of that. I feel like if you've worked in a new Broadway production before, I feel it sort of gives you kind of like a step up.
Right, that breaking into the clique.
Yeah. So even though it was like when I came to New York thinking I'm going to bag a Broadway show like that, it took me 2 years before I got my first.
Really?
Role. Yeah.
What can you give us a good a role you really thought you were going to get, or you really wanted that you didn't happen?
Yeah. Well, this is really crazy. They were actually going to put on Rock of Ages on Broadway. And I was up for the part of Stacey Jacks. And this is the first time I went to Broadway. And I went in all method. I went in hardcore. I completely dressed
in
up
the
like
outfit.
a rock star with guyliner and, the nails and whatever.
Love it.
I was walking to the
Love it.
station as though I'd been out all night. You know, it's in the subway and like talking to myself and with dark glasses. You know,
You had been out all night though.
no. Well, no, it was all method. It was all method. It was all. I was like so into this character, and I even brought my CDs and my resume and photos of. I've done Star INXS. I've done West End stuff, and I thought this is going to be in the bag. And I turned up and I sing, and I thought I did a great job. And I'm like, and by the way, here's my CD, and this is my photos of me doing so and so. I was like really cocky, like. You don't do that kind of thing at auditions, but I thought,
probably
here
not.
it is me. You want to see this? You want to see me again? So yeah, no, didn't hear
Nothing.
Not even a callback. Nothing. I'm like, oh my god, what the hell? And so I thought, oh, screw that. Come a year later, my agent saying, hey, Mick, they want to look at you for Rock of Ages again.
Same character.
Well, I thought it'd be a different character because obviously the character that I went for, they wouldn't like. They didn't like. I screwed up that. So at the time, I get the sides and the paper. I still had fax machines at that point, and the fax came through, and it was the same role. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute, what? It's the same role, but you've seen what I like.
You've seen what I can do.
You've seen. I don't. Anyway, I went in completely just myself, not as in character, no makeup, nothing. Just came in.
Wow!
And I sang,
authentic.
Thinking, right, well, this is what it is. If you don't like it, see ya. And then I walked away. As I was leaving the building, my phone rang. It was my agent saying, "You got the role."
You're kidding.
No,
Mate,
nothing.
That makes me very happy.
And it was for the first national tour. Anyway, put it that way. But it was just the beginning of a momentum that continued. So that was an in that came.
That's awesome.
Came from a failure.
And what a takeaway, because I try to bring out takeaways on the podcast, and that that idea of, I guess, being authentic and less cocksure and bringing your authentic self to the plate, and also dealing with that rejection in the first place. Speaking of which, Kris, back to you, that early part of your career, you don't get the job, and then you do get the job a month later. So I don't know, talk to us about some of those early setbacks and your coping mechanisms.
Sure. If I just reflect on what Mig said, it doesn't get the role, possibly because of his innovative approach, going method. But it didn't sound like you packed up your toys and went away, and that it was all dismal, because you reinvited that show, and you obviously go back because you say, hey, I can see that I can add value there. And that was the takeaway I had from not getting the job at Michael Johnson Associates first time. This is a place where I think I could add value, where I could work. And it means that my general decision about not wanting to work in a legal practice was something that I was going to pursue. As I said, I was fortunate enough to then get the position fairly soon. But it wasn't that long after. It was only a couple of months where Michael said, Kris, let's go for lunch. And he said, I think you're smart. I think you're very good at this. I think you're lazy. And I was employed at the Princely Sum at the time of 23,000 Australian dollars. And he said, I am going to dock your salary 1,000. So you're now on 22,000, and we'll review it in a month. And that was not typical behavior, in that people generally, the expectation would be, if you drop someone's salary, you're demotivating them and you're telling them to leave. But I thought he was authentic in what he was saying, and I thought he was true. It was accurate. So that short-term financial setback focused me to reset what my contribution was, and then we had a review a month later, and it went up to 30. So I was off to the races. But in terms of the start of that employment, I didn't get it originally, and when I turned up, he was right. I wasn't fully committing myself, and it also taught me a big lesson about understanding the differences of people in terms of work situations, that it isn't one size fits all. And I think in some of the other things that I'm interested in, like modern sport, for example, the successful coaches are people who recognize the difference in their squads rather than some sort of template that they manage everyone. So Michael picked the right rein with me. And I think that was a really, really important setback that set my whole attitude going forward.
I agree. There's a great book. It might be Daniel H. Pink on motivation, which talks about the financial element and how it can be counterintuitive to performance. But I don't know if I'm jumping ahead a bit here, but you mentioned your other, sport and your other interests, Kris. God, where do you start? You do podcasts. You're doing the Aussie professional wrestling thing. You're a big supporter of the Tigers. What do you take from the Michael Johnson world and the learnings and the mistakes and the setbacks and the failures that you take into your, I don't even know what you call all the other stuff.
If I'm looking for one word that continuously is in my thinking in my professional life, and then I've applied to the other things, that word is purpose. Is that you need to identify what your purpose is, because it's very hard to achieve if in the absence of purpose. And it's a shifting sand at the moment, the professional services world, in terms of the aspirations that people have when they come for employment. Like if we were talking about this, say, a dozen years ago, I'd be saying to you, we as an employer have to offer the younger members of our team a richer social fabric than just employment. That there are after hours things. You go to the noodle markets. There's a games night. There's a movie night. We go and see MiG or you perform. Yeah, right. Because they're offering a lot of their time to work, and they go, you need to offer me more in exchange for that commitment. Now I don't want to know about it. I just want to work what the prescribed amount is and not have these impositions, because the debate about work-life balance is that work shouldn't incur too much on your life. And so it's a very, very different model you've got to offer people. But no matter what the model is, you have to try and help people identify purpose. And if you take my firm, one way of describing it is we fill in some government forms and clients pay us to fill in those forms accurately.
Yeah.
That's a pretty short-term purpose, if that's what the job is. If I say the job is to help Australian companies in their innovation plans and help deliver genuine economic return to the community through understanding this particular program and make it part of their overall strategy, and we're working in areas that incentivize people to take risk and do something, then you're starting to get in the idea of what the purpose is. And at times I can say as an owner of the practice, fail to get that across to people. I mean, if you want to talk failure, depending on how you measure it, we can talk about my independent record label sometime.
I can't wait to get into Risky Records. Don't worry about that. We'll be talking about that in a second. But I just love what you just said around purpose, and it's a good segue / shameless plug. MiG and I work together at Song Division, and shout out Andy. And this episode's powered by Song Division. But how big are we on our purpose and our why, MiG? Like it's what we do, and it's that goes, and then our values, and for me, Kris, one of our values is helping others or help others, and yes, we all want to make money. Yes, we all want to do what we love and have financial freedom. But that sounds to me like, whether it's what you're doing, Michael Johnson, what you're doing with me, what you mentor me, what you're doing with Risky Records, what you do, you do like helping people. But yeah, MiG, want to talk about the INXS stuff real quick if you want to. You were runner-up or third. How was it? What was it like? Were you gutted at the time or relieved at the time, and then more? How do you think about it now, looking back? Sometimes you hear those people that won those big shows and they wish they didn't, and sometimes you hear people who didn't win them and are like, thank God that actually didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, good question. I think the goalposts changed all the time, because initially when I was first entering this competition, I was actually in London doing playing the lead in the Queen musical "We Will Rock You."
Yes,
and earning really well. We just bought a 2-bedroom apartment. We just got a puppy. Life is pretty good. And then along comes this possibility of throwing everything away for this chance.
The devil.
Possibility of chance. Yeah, this thing. And at this time, I was like, things were happening at a point where I was on a roll. Like things were happening. So I was like, this looks, that I'm winning. Yeah, why not? I'll give it a go. And it just so happened that I was able to get out of my third-year contract with We Will Rock You because of what Star INXS was about. It was a recording deal possibility. It was film, TV. It was all that. So I was able to get out of my contract with We Will Rock You. But me thinking initially, I was just thinking, I know I kind of know these reality TV shows. It's still kind of new at the time, around 2005.
Yeah. Peak.
Well, I thought that as long as I can get to maybe the final five, if I get the final five, if I get a recording deal or something, or at least I can then use
the name
springboard for something else, then great. Then when you're in it, of course, then the goalposts change. You think, no, hang on a second, I'm getting close to the end here. I want to. You get past the fifth place, and you're like, I'm fourth now. I mean, I could actually. What if I win this? I would really love to tour with INXS. But then,
oh my god,
there was one point where we're actually in the mansion, right? We're in the mansion where we're filming, and it was raining outside, so we couldn't film anything. We spent all day just watching INXS videos, and we're all looking at Michael Hutchence and the incredible dynamic frontman that he was. And we all turned to each other and we said, what are we doing? This is not going to work. Who's going to replace that? It's just
really.
He had an energy. He had this charisma. He had these things like this is the formula.
Like imposter syndrome, almost.
Imposter syndrome. Yeah, all that was coming into play. It was the fact that we were trying to say, INXS is going to move forward, and we realized without Michael Hutchence, it just loses everything that INXS was. Not everything, because it was a combination of all the characters, Kirk, John, and
yeah, totally, and it was all filmed,
Gary Beers.
Yeah.
So the whole point of now was when. I really thought but still at the same time, you're in a competition. And I was thinking, I really want to win this. I found out that a couple of weeks before the final, or maybe 3 weeks before the final, they were not looking at me anymore to win. At one point, I was the favorite. Then realized that everything that I was doing, they were criticizing. I'm going, hang on. I get the narrative here. You don't want me to win. But at the same time, I said, I just want to make it to the final. I just want to make it to the final now, because of the final three, they all won a car each. And I knew people were flying in from all over the place for the final. I wanted to be on stage performing.
100%.
That's all I wanted to do. So when I got to the final and I made the final three, I thought, this is good. I'm done.
This is good. But so it wasn't voting; it was judges.
Oh,
it was voting.
It was voting, and
but they were sort of not trash talking you, but they were making sure that the narrative was that people wouldn't vote for you.
Well, they kept on criticizing everything. Yeah, it was kind of like, oh, okay. I mean, it wasn't the voting was not rigged, but but the final decision of who they're going to choose was up to INXS. So INXS, the last members of INXS were able to decide of all these people who were left, who's going to be the one. But, it was about the people voting to find out who those last few people were going to be. And it was one of the first, I think it was the only reality TV series where it was a whole worldwide vote, that it wasn't just one country, whatever. It was
massive, wasn't it?
It was pretty crazy. It was very adventurous and for the time. And it was Mark Burnett who produces Survivor and The Apprentice.
Yeah. Kris, you like your reality shows?
Yeah, I and look, I'm just sort of sitting here going.
Were you into it? Did you watch it?
I didn't see Rockstar, which I'm disappointed about, and I'm definitely going to go back on YouTube and do some exploration to put it in context. But yeah, look, I mean, we always find a couple of reality shows in our schedule to watch, and I'm listening to MiG and how close he got. I think it's a lazy criticism, the criticism of reality TV, generally made by people who don't watch it. Like that would be my takeaway. And one format that
how did you take it, MiG?
Take what exactly? How did I take what exactly?
Sorry, because I got a delay there, Kris. How did you take you haven't won it? Was it relief, or at that point did you want it?
The rejection, when I finally it was at the point where in the final and they said, MiG, you're not right for our band INXS. It was at that point it was kind of a bit of both, because I was so exhausted at that point. I didn't sleep for a whole week, so I was so tired by the final, and I kind of went, okay, yeah, I knew this was coming. And I kind of went, yeah, it's fine, I'm good. But then I was afterwards that I kind of went, why did I not fight harder? Why did I not push extra? Why did I do that song? All these thoughts came into my mind, and all this regret. I had sleepless nights. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, go, why did I do that? Why did I sing that? Why did I push hard? Those things kind of thought, and that was the afterthought. It was the after service that I thought, it would have been really cool to tour with INXS for a couple of years, because I was a huge INXS fan.
And I think you would have. And I don't think you need to replace Michael Hutchence, or that shouldn't have been the goal. Like, it's the same with Queen and what they've done with Adam Lambert. But like, I think you would have fit in with the guys. Like, as in you were that caliber. Like, they would have liked, you would have been a good hang with those guys.
I just think it would have been a really fun tour, and
I think it would have been too. I don't think they would have like looked at you as like not worthy. I think you would have all had a great time. In fact, I wish I was there.
Oh, well, that's the point. No, I wish I was there, and it was kind of like that kept on kicking myself, thinking, maybe it's a bit of imposter syndrome that you were talking about before, and it was a feeling of like, and maybe I always felt that I just was not good enough to be there. And that's
interesting.
And that's been kind of plaguing me for a lot of my career. A lot of things like, I second guess myself. And that's, maybe I need a therapist or something like that. But I feel like that's been a real kind of hindrance in my career.
Well, we all need therapy, mate. So don't worry about that. But I wonder if you'd think that in retrospect, but I bet at the time you were working your ass off. So it's very easy to go, I should have worked that little bit harder, but I bet in the moment it might not have been potentially possible to work harder. I bet you're looking back on it with a harsh lens. I reckon you would have been running on empty.
Well, everything's much easier in hindsight, isn't it?
100%. I wish I did so much different.
You wish you'd done something different. We should work this just a little bit harder, or did something slightly different, or not say something. But at the time, it was all kind of real. It was, and being in a reality TV show, I don't know if people who are listening to this can relate to this, but your sense of reality and your putting everything into perspective, your perspective completely changes, because you are sequestered into this world. You'd have no access to any outside information. Your whole world exists with those 15 people who you're competing with.
Yeah.
And it becomes a thing with that is your whole world. You have no access to anything else. The people you're only allowed to speak to are them. Only people you're allowed to relate to.
Yeah, it's a bubble. It's a bubble.
And it feels like after a while, when someone is actually eliminated from the show, like for example, we were recording at the CBS studios in LA, and then when one person was eliminated from the show, by the time we got back to our house, they had completely
vanished,
erased.
They vanished.
Every evidence that they even existed.
Just like the Golden Bachelor, Kris.
Yeah. So we come back and they've disappeared. And so these people who you get to have a kind of you grow a relationship with, it hurts. I was devastated.
I can't. People. I think that would potentially be would be harder from the kind of shows I've watched. You're losing, new family members, like you said. You lose all sense of time. So you could have been living with them for 4 years. But thank you for being so open and honest about that. We haven't got long, so I want to move on to some more. Well, I'm about to say more positive stuff. But Kris, work in the music world, Risky Records, DJing, putting on Sold Out, these awesome things that you do. Where does that come from, apart from helping others? Was it I've never really asked you about, was it a want to be a performer? Well, you are a performer, but to be a musician or perform in a band? Where's all this throwing of money at things like Days Like Stars come from?
Yeah, well, and look, I always enjoyed music as a young person, and really found my keen interest when I went to high school. The school was encouraging of broad education, and that included choir and musicals and plays and a little bit of rudimentary instrumentation. I don't think anything occurred there that said that this is where I was particularly talented, but I was very interested. And, and my first real passion was progressive rock. So I'm like 11, 12, sort of typical kid of that era, attracted to that sort of music. And so I became really interested in music journalism. And that was around the time, it was in the 70s. People tend to think of the 70s as hippies and all that sort of thing. And that's really more the 60s, or the real 70s are things like glam rock. At the late part of the 70s, the arrival of hip hop, and in the middle, punk. And so in those days in Australia, there was only really one radio station that would play punk. The way to follow that scene was to read the English trade papers, the New Musical Express and the Melody Maker. So my first interest was, I think I'd like to be a music critic. And then it just didn't resonate with me, because I found that if I...
Nice. You would make a great critic.
Yeah, but if you go to a gig or listen to a record and you're critiquing it, you're automatically sitting there going, because I did a little bit of it at university, I go, I'm not really enjoying the gig. I'm almost sort of removing myself from it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that just kind of sat. Now, I was lucky enough to be friends with people who actually had talent. And one of them was my best mate from high school, Stephen Ray. And he, and he started a career as, I'll say, a screen composer. He had a really interesting, circuitous route to that. It's actually a little bit not too different to what Mig was saying. He went to accompany people auditioning for a new youth theatre company in South Australia called Magpie. And Neil Armfield, the well-known director, was doing auditions. And so Stephen was playing piano for other people. And Neil said, you should audition. And he got a job as part of this new repertoire, this youth acting company in South Australia. So he upped from Sydney and went down to Adelaide. And of course, every time there was a musical direction component to the play, he did it. And he said, yeah, I can act. And he got some TV roles and movies and things like that. But it's the music's the thing. So he came back as an older person and studied at the Conservatorium of Music and did composition, where a young Paul Mack was there. Not that Stephen really knew Paul Mack at the time. Paul Mack came up to him afterwards and said,
Paul Mack.
I was at the con with you and you were great and blah, blah, blah. So when you're a screen composer, you are collaborating and writing for people's other vision. I've got one or two things where I helped him along the way with that, which was really interesting. But you are always ultimately working for somebody else. And he had an impulse in him that he wanted to write his own stuff for his own, under his banner. So we were, I don't know, naive enough, dumb enough to go, let's self-produce and release an album. And so I kind of, for want of a better term, executive produced it. And, he set up his studio in my house at the time. It was an album called Feet Lift Off the Ground, and it was a investigation of sample culture, but rather than classic sample culture being James Brown, Parliament, Funkadelic, those sorts of things, that world, he was sampling from Renaissance music, like pieces like the Starbuck Martyr, and writing a pop song around that. And we worked with some very, very interesting people, Luke Hannigan from Lotel, Tyrone Noonan from George, Jeffrey Rush.
Yep.
And we had a lot of fun. The record was actually well received, given that we were self-promoting. And, we spent a lot of money on it. And, the title track got covered by the 10 Tenors, and there were all these interesting experiences. Didn't make any money, but it was so much fun. And I said, at this stage, I'm turning 40, and it's my version, for want of a better term, of a midlife crisis. I had no interest in buying a Ferrari, right? But I said, well, this is a way of being actually able to, again, you say help people become part of that industry. So we set up this label, and it was literally, because Stephen is 6'9" in the imperial parlance, and I'm 6'6". So we called it, and you talk about failures and setbacks, we decided to call it Twin Towers Records.
Twin Towers. This is so full circle.
Isn't it? And we had a logo, which was the World Trade Center, and then the sadness of 9/11 occurred. And I was talking to Mig about this when we met. And you had that choice then, like, do you pursue it? And there was lots of examples, including the Australian band Girling, who had an album title just coming out, When Young Terrorists Chased the Sun, and things like that. These events, but because we hadn't launched, we said, it's too much of a story to try and explain it in that
No.
context.
No.
So we reduced it to
No
Stephen.
way. If you're a legacy brand,
Yeah,
maybe.
we reduced it to S&K, Stephen and Kris, that old chestnut, and then we expanded it to Risky. And then we just went and independently released artists that we were interested in. And it created a second outlet for me. It tickled that creative drive that I had and purpose in an area that I liked, and it opened up everything else that's happened since. And I was lucky enough in my practice, which I now owned outright, to have that flexibility to be transparent to my core job. This is also what I'm doing, and I'm not trying to hide it or whatever. And I guarantee you, it's motivating me to do a better job if you're working with me in the core business. And that entry into the music industry opened up everything else, and that's the basis on which everything else then.
That's awesome. That's very and thank you. Yes, you definitely were a big supporter of Saving Grace and Dream Delay, and of course Days Like Stars. We do got to wrap it up, but I wanted to ask you both. It's a cliche question, but what you've got one thing that you can offer. We'll start with you, Mig, to someone who might be considering doing what they want to, performing, being on stage, what that looks like. Maybe they're like you, they haven't figured out exactly where and how that will be, but they know that's what they want to do. What are you saying to them? You've got 30 seconds with them.
Just don't be anything more than who you are. As you were talking about before, about being your authentic self, there's also the backstory behind that is that you have no idea why decisions are being made. So when you get a rejection, you think, oh, it's because I'm no good or whatever. But in the reality is it could be because they already, maybe the part or whatever is no longer available, or they decided to, choose a girl instead of a boy, or things like that, which you're never in contention with. There's so many factors, and to second guess yourself, which is, again, I'm trying to listen to my own advice here, but I always find that when you are your authentic self, you can give something that is unique, and that is you. This is, nobody else can give this. So if you can be honest and just stick it out and be your true authentic self, that will pay dividends in the future.
Yeah,
it may not be an immediate thing, but it will come clear later on that your authenticity is what got you the role and what got you the success that you now have.
I love that, man. Well, the cliche, be yourself, everyone else is taken. Kris, before you answer, I forgot to say this. You mentioned Paul Mac talking about rejection or failure. I think I've told you this, but I gave him a demo at a gig, and then I must have seen him 2 years later at Newtown Festival, probably both of us loving life at the time. And I said, shout out to Paul Mac, who I'd actually love to get on the podcast. And I said, I gave you a demo a couple of years ago. I walked up to him in front of a group of people, and he said, yeah, well, if it was any good, you would have heard from me. Oh! And I don't think I've ever laughed so hard in my life.
He's a tough...
Oh, my God.
And no, he laughed it off. It was funny, and I think we hugged it out. But it was. Well, what do you say to that? Okay, back to the question. Sorry. Back to the question.
Is, I remember the question. Chris. The answer is, unlike Apollo 13, failure is an option, to sort of pick up one of your themes today. And so, I work in an area where a validation of whether you're doing research and development is failure. Because it's risky, not everything works. Yeah. People tend to want to hide their failures. Whereas they're part of what makes you who you are, and they shouldn't part of what, as Mig was saying, what makes you authentic. So you need to embrace them, learn from them, and put them in the right context. I mean, like, accept them, and you won't get anywhere if you don't accept them. And one of the interesting things about the label, and reflecting again on what Mig said, the artists that we collaborated with tended to come through our network. Like, there's sort of that trusted network. If people are referring you, that's because they believe in you, and that's really important. I always feel building a trusted network is a key thing to whatever you're doing, and as a way to progress. But we accepted demos, and some of the demos were, there are a couple of individuals who sent in demos that I was a bit concerned about. Like one demo, the guy's lead track was called "Going Postal." and I think it was autobiographical. So, and there was another one where the title track was called "Let's Meet for Coffee," which is
Wow.
literal. But in the demos, invariably, people who would send you too much music. But if you had the patience to get to tracks 8, 9, and 10, that's where you actually heard who they were and where the interest, if any, and value lay, because typically people are going to make tracks 1, 2, and 3 what they think you want to hear, right? And
Never thought about that.
And it was just it was a real truism. Is you were better off hearing the second half of any demo that you were sent to get a sense of what
the weird stuff.
It's actually what they were interested in, and
and
so
exactly.
that sheets back to what Mig is saying. Is like you've got to work out who you are, and then you don't have to worry if everybody doesn't embrace you, because everyone's not going to like you, everyone's not going to accept you. But if you represent who you actually are, that's where you'll find your trusted network.
Wow. Well said. I think we got to call it. I would love to. I got a lot more things I want to ask you guys about. Oh, actually, really quick, just out of interest. First gig for both of you. This is a Song Division question, but first gig of note, Kris. It's not like first game-changing gig that people would know.
It's a very easy answer for me. The first concert I went to was Electric Light Orchestra at Randwick Racecourse in 1977. I still have the ticket. I think it was about $4.50. Jeff Lynne, I think, writes the best backing vocals in the world, and obviously he's an incredibly storied writer, coming to the end of the ELO story as we speak. But there were two big controversies at the gig. Two really memorable features. One was they had a green laser that split in three and just shot up into the sky. Didn't do anything else, but we were all going, "Oh my God, a laser!" And will that destroy the moon or whatever? That was the special effect. And the other thing, of course, in their live iteration, there were one violin and two cellos, and they produced this big sound. And what it was, of course, was they had in those days, sort of pre-digital and MIDI and things like that, they had tape beds. So the string beds were being paid by tape recorders, and Musicians Equity, which was the musicians union, did try and shut the concert down, because the argument was that by doing that, like the same thing with synthesizers, you were taking work
sampling
from musicians, and there are all these content requirements.
Wow, the original AI.
Yeah, but that was my first gig.
Okay, so Mig, quickly, I'm sure I probably know yours, but tell us.
Yeah, well, I do say that my first gig was Barry Manilow in 1982 at the Sydney Entertainment Centre, but I got to say, probably the most influential gig that I realized, oh my gosh, I want to do this, is when I saw Howard Jones at the Hordern Pavilion in 1985. And I was just, it's an ethereal thing that I saw him on stage by himself, surrounded by all these keyboards. And I was just like, that is amazing.
Hey.
Yeah,
that's cool. That was my Billy Joel moment. Like, well, I want to do that. No, but Howard Jones, that's cool.
He's collaborated with all sorts of interesting people, Howard. He's still going, and they've just brought out an anthology.
He's still
and
I follow him on Instagram. He's still touring extensively and still kicking.
Yeah,
he's amazing, and he sounds the same. I'm a huge fan. Always.
And he's got a 4 CD anthology split into the pop songs, the chill songs, and it's been curated really well.
Wow.
I'm going to go listen to that right now.
I saw him at the Factory Theatre. I could almost touch him.
Like recently?
I reckon that would have been about 10 years ago I saw him. But can I just say, on first gigs, my favourite answer is my daughter's, because my daughter will tell you Blink 182 was her first gig at the Hordern Pavilion in Sydney, and that's not true.
That's pretty cool.
Her first gig was at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, and it was Casey and the Sunshine Band, Village People, headlined by Cher. And I think she should be wearing that with pride.
No way.
And not lying to the world and saying Blink was her first.
1, 2,
that is so much
3,
cooler. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. I cannot wait to see you both in person. And I just want to say thank you so much
Look, Mom, I'm failing. Look, Mom, I'm failing. Hurry up and watch me fall.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye for now.
See you, mate. See you.
Ta-da.
Bye.